Alright, it's time for another Jojolands review. I got busy around the time the last chapter dropped, so this time around, I'm doing a double review. This video is going to cover both Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. So let's begin with Chapter 4. They're invading Rohan's home, and they have to deal with that cat from the last chapter. If you recall, this is not Rohan's cat, it's actually a stray cat, and we don't really know where it's from or what its deal is. It seems to be protecting the diamond though, and it has them in a bind with these plastic strings because it has a stand similar to Stonefree. Paco and Dragona are still stuck in this stand attack, but the pressure is building because Rohan is no longer falling for Jodio's diversions, so he's starting to head right in their direction and they have to act fast. Paco's first thought is to cut his way out, so he asks Usagi for some scissors, and he starts to get frantic because Usagi's really clueless and confused.
Huh?
But the string is so tough that it shatters the scissors. So what he ends up doing is using the hustle to amplify force on what remains of the scissors to cut himself free. And he succeeds. Meanwhile, Dragona uses his stand, Smooth Operators, to relocate his thumb and have it slide under the string. I find it interesting that we have these stands that are basically underpowered compared to old stands, but they're being used in very clever ways to deal with problems that are on a much smaller scale than we're normally used to as JoJo fans. For instance, Smooth Operators or the Hustle probably wouldn't win a fight against any JoJo stands from the old continuity. But in the context of a home invasion, they can really shine and be used in creative ways. With both of them free of the stand, they make a mad dash for the exit. But unfortunately, the diamond falls right out of Dragona's bag, which is mysteriously wide open, and then they come face to face with none other than Rohan himself, who actually doesn't seem very angry. Just like the Rohan of the last continuity, this Rohan is characterized by his curiosity. He wants to find out who these people are, and he's looking for their motive. And luckily for him, he has a way of finding out, because his stand is Heaven's Door, and it works the exact same way as it did in the last continuity. Only, just like I predicted in the last video, this one is a lot taller because it looks like the new version of Pink Dark Boy, and I've got to give credit to Araki where it's due. That was some excellent foreshadowing. But before I go any further, I want to address something. I've heard numerous people make comments about this Rohan possibly being the exact same Rohan from the old universe. But at this point, we actually know for a fact that that's not true. And let me explain why. Jojolands is set during COVID, right? You know what else is set during COVID? The most recent chapters of Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan, which takes place in the original universe during COVID, with Rohan as the main character. Which means Rohan didn't use Heaven's Door to survive Made in Heaven or whatever. He is presently alive in Morio in the original continuity, which the Rohan manga is already saying still exists. Because between the Part 8 family tree and these new Rohan chapters, we have confirmation that the old universe is still alive and well. So no, this isn't the exact same Rohan. Araki probably just really likes drawing Rohan, so that's why we got him back in this new continuity. In the same way we've been getting like remixed versions of characters like Kira or Jonathan being Johnny. It's just like a new artistic spin on those characters. Alright, back to Jojolands. So with Rohan's endless curiosity, he uses Heaven's Door on Dragona and completely reads all of the details that we as the audience understand about this situation. He learns their motives for coming here as well as their names. So just like that, they're already at his mercy, because they can't hide their identities anymore. And to make things worse, they don't really have the tools to overpower him either, because their stands aren't really combat stands, they're more so utility stands. Paco even tries to get the drop on him with the hustle, and almost succeeds, but Heaven's Door is just too powerful. It just had to tap him once and he was kinda out of it. But as a subversion of expectations, Rohan isn't really a threat to them. He doesn't really wish them harm. In fact, he seems to be more scared for them. He comments that he's relieved, but that they are now in an unsavory situation. And the reason for that seems to be connected to the diamond itself, which is almost implied by falling out of Dragona's bag, teleporting out of his hands, and by Rohan's own words to have supernatural properties. So what's the deal with the diamond, and how does it connect to the cat? At this point, one might even come to the conclusion that this diamond is cursed. After all, in Part 8 we learned about blessings and curses. Or could it be something else entirely, like a stand? This chapter leaves us off on that cliffhanger, just asking these sorts of questions. Questions that are sort of answered in Chapter 5, November Rain. Chapter 5 opens up with Rohan calling the police to report the incident. He somewhat downplays the situation so that they could get off with a light sentence. But as he's going to restrain Dragona, he's intercepted by Jodio's stand. And the way that Jojo beats Rohan with his stand in this chapter is really clever, because throughout the last few chapters, Jojo has been paying attention to how Rohan behaves, and he seems to take notice that Rohan is a very curious individual and gets caught up in little details. So he tries to leave a trail to bait Rohan over so that he could sneak attack him. So essentially, he plays on Rohan's curiosity to beat him. That's a fairly unusual way for a Jojo fight to happen, and I kind of like it. But just having Rohan pinned down isn't really beating him. As we know, Rohan already knows their names and identities, so they can't really escape the police in a meaningful way. While the others kind of want to beat Rohan senselessly for this, Jojo does not allow them to because he seems to have a sort of respect for Rohan as an author and as a person. It's interesting because in the early chapters of Jojolands, we saw Jojo as the aggressive one and Dragona had to hold him back. But this time, it's the other way around. And I think that's very telling of how Jojo views people in general. If he views them as scumbags, like the police officers who were treating his brother inappropriately, then he will beat them senselessly. But if he views them as people he respects or admires, he will treat them differently. So he really does have that Joestar blood in him, that sense of justice. And I'm glad we're finally seeing this sort of side to him. Even so, it's not like Jojo's perfectly innocent here. He still wants to get away without the police catching him. And so he tells Rohan, "Look, I don't want to have any trouble here. Please retract the police report. We'll clear this place up so it doesn't look like there was a robbery. We'll leave you alone and we'll be on our way." Rohan says his signature line, "I refuse." But not for the reasons you might expect. Rohan is actually not concerned that they get punished for this. He's more concerned about them, as their safety is apparently now in jeopardy. They are about to be followed. By what? He doesn't say. But he does say that they're better off being in jail than dealing with whatever this is. Rather than being caught off guard by Rohan's cryptic comments, Jojo pulls out the lava rocks that he obtained earlier, and he suspects that these rocks are more valuable to Rohan than the diamond. In fact, they're the real valuable object here. To both confirm this suspicion and demonstrate he means business, Jojo destroys one of the rocks right in front of Rohan and notices as Rohan goes into shock. So maybe the diamond itself isn't even cursed. Maybe the lava rocks just facilitate wealth in a way that's very similar to Milagro Man. With that knowledge in mind, Jojo attempts to use these rocks as a sort of leverage to make Rohan call off the police. Rohan does decide to let Jojo hold on to the rock, as Jojo is the one who, quote, drew the card, and must now deal with the consequences. But before Jojo goes, Rohan has one final thing to say to him. In spite of feeling humiliated by all of these circumstances, Rohan does find Jojo quite interesting, and he warns him, if you're going to take that, then a responsibility comes with it. You are by no means to let go of that lava rock. There's only one, make absolutely sure. If you handle that lava rock with care, you'll be able to become filthy rich. Such a mechanism will gradually become yours. A law of nature lies inside of that rock. Go ahead and want. Embrace ambition. Don't lose heart. Climb higher. We'll meet again, I'm sure of it. I'll resend the report to the police. Be careful and take your plane home. And with that, we get a reaffirmation of all of the themes that we read in the first chapter. Jojo is going to become filthy rich. He's also going to make use of the mechanism. But to do so, he's going to have to overcome some serious trials. You have to remember that the reason Jojo and friends are committing crimes is because they're poor. Their families live in poverty and they need money to make ends meet. But now they've stumbled across what is potentially a source of great wealth. And from here on, they will have to fight to earn that. At first, I wasn't really on board with Jojo as a character. But after reading through these chapters and really asking myself what the themes of this story are, I think I'm starting to appreciate him more and more. And I think that Rohan saw that in him too, because towards the end of this chapter, Rohan even seems to be sort of rooting for him. And the chapter ends with the gang trying to depart from this island, only for the shocking reveal that they are being followed by an entire mob of stray cats. And this genuinely makes me very excited for the next chapter, because it's such a unique predicament that could only really happen in JoJo. Like, think about how crazy this is. These poor people with supernatural powers go to raid this rich guy's mansion, only to get chased by the cat mafia. I don't think that we've ever had anything quite like this. Especially not with cats, or like any animals in general. It's so rare for an animal stand user to be in this series. There've only been like a few. This could get like really, really chaotic, especially with all of these weaker stands that the main characters have. And I'm wondering if this is just where the story's going, you know? Are we going to be dealing with the forces of nature throughout this part? Are all the villains going to be Hawaiian animals this time around? And are all of them going to have stands? I'd totally be down for that. And I'm just like genuinely really excited to see where this goes. What a reveal. And that's about it for Jojolands Chapter 4 and 5. What did you think of these last couple chapters? Are you as excited as I am? And what do you think is going to happen next? I'd be happy to discuss this in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like. I was on a little bit of a break, but I'm hoping to drop more content on my channel soon. So if you like what I'm doing, any form of support at all will help my channel out, even just coming back to watch more of my videos. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.